On our newscast tonight, the National Assembly approves the arrest of lawmaker Lee Seok-ki, accused of conspiring to stage a rebellion against the current government in the event of an inter-Korean war. Key congressional members expressed support for U.S. President Barack Obama's plan to punish the Syrian government for its chemical weapons attack last month. President Obama assures a war-weary America that any engagement will only include limited strikes, not full-blown war. Former President Roh Tae-woo returns $21 million he owed the nation for corruption charges. However, the government is still waiting on another former president, Chun Doo-hwan, to cough up what he owes. Stick with us for these stories and more. It is noon in Damascus, 4 p.m. in Hanoi, and 6 on a Wednesday evening here in Seoul. Welcome to Early Edition at 6. I'm Kim Ji.
And I'm Daniel Chen. Thank you for joining us. We start off with updates on President Park Geun-hye's itinerary.
President Park Geun-hye embarked on an 8-day trip to Russia and Vietnam this Wednesday.
She is scheduled to attend the G20 summit in St. Petersburg before heading over to Hanoi for a state visit to Vietnam. Our presidential office correspondent Jin-ju starts us off.
President Park is scheduled to attend the G20 Leaders Summit on Thursday and Friday in the Russian city of St. Petersburg. This year's meeting will mainly focus on addressing the pending economic and financial issues that developed and emerging countries are divided on. Such agenda items include countering the negative effects of Washington's plan to taper its stimulus program, ensuring financial stability, reforming the global financial system, and preventing tax avoidance by multinational firms. Other major topic points will be tackling unemployment and strengthening international development assistance. President Park, at the request of Russian President Vladimir Putin, is expected to make a lead speech in the second working session on Friday, where she will emphasize the importance of international cooperation in creating more jobs amid slowing growth. During her stay, President Park is also scheduled to hold bilateral talks with the leaders of 4 countries: Italy, Germany, Kazakhstan, and Russia. The president will end her Russia trip on Saturday and then fly to Vietnam for a 5-day state visit. She will hold a bilateral summit with her Vietnamese counterpart, Tuong Tan Sang, on Monday to discuss ways to strengthen cooperation on political, economic, and cultural issues. President Park will also pay a visit to Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam's biggest economic city, where some 1,800 Korean companies operate and more than 85,000 Korean residents live. Her trip to Vietnam aims at pushing ahead with her sales diplomacy and emphasizing the importance of the ASEAN region as a long-term economic partner. Jin-ju, Arirang News.
The National Assembly has voted to strip leftist lawmaker Lee Seok-ki of parliamentary immunity from arrest.
He is accused of conspiring an armed rebellion benefiting North Korea. Hyunbin reports.
The ruling and opposition parties agreed to approve the arrest of leftist lawmaker Lee Seok-ki on Wednesday afternoon. Parliamentary approval is required by law if prosecutors want to detain a lawmaker while the National Assembly is in session. With that approval now granted, the court is expected to issue an arrest warrant for Lee. The far-left lawmaker of the Unified Progressive Party is accused of conspiring to stage an armed revolt and forming an anti-state organization called the Revolutionary Organization, or RO. He allegedly discussed sabotaging the South Korean government and the U.S. military in Korea with members of the RO if war were to break out with the North. Before the vote, Representative Lee denied the allegations and told the Assembly that he never conspired to rebel against the government. He added that the accusations are an effort to cover up an ongoing scandal surrounding the National Intelligence Service and its alleged meddling in last year's presidential election. On top of the rebellion charges, Lee also faces a parliamentary investigation in an unrelated bribery scandal. Lee has been on the list for evaluation by the Parliamentary Ethics Committee since March for election corruption. The two parties agreed to call the Parliamentary Ethics Committee into session to review Lee's eligibility before the Chuseok holiday on September 19th. Yuri-an, Arirang News.
So the National Assembly finally has approved the arrest of lawmaker Lee Seok-ki, who is accused of conspiring a rebellion against the current government in the event of an inter-Korean war.
The scandal is widely expected to rock the political scene for quite some time. In particular, this is seen as a major setback for the main opposition Democratic Party, although lawmaker Lee Seok-ki is of the minor opposition Unified Progressive Party. For more on this, we are now joined by Dr. Kim Ji Yoon from the Asan Institute for Policy Studies. Hello, Dr. Kim. Thank you for joining us.
It's great to be here.
Kim. So the ruling Saudi Party is demanding the main opposition Democratic Party to take responsibility for this Lee Seok-ki scandal. That is because the main opposition party kind of united with minor opposition parties, including the UPP for the April general elections, but also the December presidential election. Now, this argument that the main opposition party must take responsibility for this scandal, what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, this is what you have to expect when you're forming a coalition. I mean, there's certainly the electoral benefits, but there's also the political risk. And I personally believe that the coalition with UPP by DP is a critical mistake. It didn't really give the electoral benefits in the National Assembly election in April last year, and it also caused some liability because of Ms. Lee Jung-hee in the presidential election too. And now there's a huge political risk. And of course, the Saenuri Party is going to accuse, and they are accusing the Democratic Party of, giving the outlet to those, so they call like a crazy North Korea followers to get into the National Assembly by forming the coalition with the UPP. But you have to look at the different perspective, like the progressive side. Well, I think there are a lot of resentment and also some disappointment about the DP and their initial reaction to this scandal from the progressive side. Like, they're not aggressive enough, they're not assertive enough, and they didn't even try to spin up that scandal. I mean, if you look into the investigation and accusation, there are some details that you may raise some reasonable doubts. Is it really a serious plan? And then DP never took on that part, and they just so easily stuck with the frame made by the Saenuri Party and followed that. So, well, in sum, the DP and their followers, the DP is now seen and perceived as incapable, and I dare say that vegetative party.
Vegetative, right. Yeah. They failed to shed a lot of light on certain parts that could work to their advantage when they had the chance. They took a lot of wrong turns, took a lot of bad gambles, including, of course, vouching for Lee Seok-ki. And now this Lee Seok-ki scandal definitely will affect DP in the future and will affect their future moves, right?
Yeah, well, one thing they are doing right now is that they try to keep the distance from UPP and the Lee Seok-ki scandal as much as possible, as we already noticed.
Maybe a little bit too late for that.
Yeah, or maybe too much to some people. And then within the DP, I think there's the faction of the, we call in Korean the Chinno, a follower of the late President Roh Tae-woo, is completely died out now. I mean, their power and their voice has waned out after the presidential election anyway, but this will be the final, really critical shot to kill the voices of them. And the conservative side is already targeting Mr. Moon Jae-in for being the less aggressive on this scandal, and even look like a sympathizing for Mr. Lee because of Mr. Moon Jae-in's abstention of the scheduling vote yesterday. So, but the most urgent thing is, of course, upcoming by-election in October, and the DP is doubly squared by Saenuri Party, by this scandal, and also another factor, which is Mr. An.
That's right, correctly. So, and because of this sedition scandal, the call for rigorous reform of the National Intelligence Service it's nowhere to be found now. So despite what's happening right now, would you say the NIS needs to reform for the good of this country still?
I mean, I'd like to emphasize that this Lee Seok-ki scandal should not give a pardon to the NIS's own problem. I mean, simply put, two wrongs do not make one right. And NIS scandal is really a serious challenge to the government, the legitimacy of the government and the institution, and even to the constitution and the electoral democracy of the country. Well, I think, interestingly, this scandal, the Lee Seok-ki scandal and NIS scandal, both represent what was the old tried problem was between of the conservative side of the Korea and also the progressive side of Korea. And the NIS scandal is totally represents how the NIS wielded almost almighty and overstepping powers, particularly under the dictatorship. And this tradition is still remain. And the Lee Seok-ki scandal shows that the progressive side and their old tried outdated agenda of pro-North Korea and is very unappealing to many electorates. So I hope these two scandals give some, the point for both the conservative and progressive side to make changes in the new political landscape of Korea.
Right, two wrongs don't make a right, but then they certainly seem to have maybe perhaps balanced things out there. Of course, this timely events might point to perhaps some intended or unintended misdirection objectives by the NIS. Certainly, NIS needs a certain thorough look into what the organization stands for and what it should stand for in the future.
Exactly.
But that aside, of course, for the parties involved, for the October by-elections, how do you think the political landscape will be reshaped then?
Well, the October by-election is October 30th, so we still have almost 2 months left. And as you know, in the Korean politics, during the 2 months, anything can happen. So I cannot really predict that this will be, the leading, really primary concern and agenda or issue in that election. But obviously, the Henry Party will try to revisit this issue during the by-election, and maybe even longer, like until the next year's local election, because the Seoul metropolitan area and Gyeonggi area is, especially the local government, is dominated by the DP currently. So they try to use this issue again and to replace the seats. Well, for the DP side, of course, they try to disconnect the issue and try to put more effort to focus on the economy and domestic politics, and of course, criticize President Park Geun-hye. But another one big critical factor is Mr. Ahn Cheol-soon and his new party. And well, I heard that he's quietly roaming around in the mobilizing and collecting the votes in the moderate and reform-minded voters in the Seoul and Gyeonggi area. And he already is a liability, more of a liability of the DP, because it's obvious that he and his party, once he and his party play in the game, then he's going to split the progressive votes seriously, and that is quite a big threat to the Democratic Party. So it is, well, very obvious to predict that what the two major parties are going to do, but what is more of a great interest is how the Mr. Ahn is going to move around.
Certainly lots of factors that come in when we think about the October by-elections. Yeah. Well, thank you, Dr. Kim, for your time and for visiting us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Former President Roh Tae-woo has settled an old debt to the nation and finally repaid the $21 million in unpaid fines that he owes for corruption charges, while another former President Chun Doo-hwan has yet to pay up.
But the pressure is on as the government steps up efforts to crack down on tax evasion and corruption. Kim Hyunbin has the latest.
Former Korean President Chun Doo-hwan is expected to repay millions of dollars in unpaid fines to the government after being convicted of taking bribes while in office in the 1980s. He was ordered to pay the fines in 1997, but he refused to do so for years. But now, with the government cracking down on tax evasion and attempting to right the wrongs of the past, the pressure is on Chun to pay what he owes. Chun's second eldest son, Chae-young, said he would pay up to $91 million of the fine during questioning by the Seoul Central Prosecutor's Office on Tuesday. Prosecutors had summoned Chae-young for questioning on suspicions that he had evaded taxes through shady real estate purchases, primarily abroad. Chae-young is the first of the former president's 4 children to be questioned. The sum is just part of the $152 million in unpaid fines owed by the former dictator, after he was ordered in 1997 to return to the nation. $200 million in illegal funds amassed during his presidency. Prosecutors also plan to question the dictator's eldest son, Jae-kook, the CEO of Sigongsa, one of the leading publishing companies in the nation. Jae-kook is suspected of laundering his father's slush funds through purchase of art and property under borrowed names, and also via a paper company in the British Virgin Islands. The former president was sentenced to life in prison in 1997 and was ordered to pay fines for leading an insurrection and accepting bribes while in power from 1980 to 1987. The pressure is on for Chun to pay up, as former President Roh Tae-woo, who was sentenced with Chun back in 1997, coughed out the remainder of the roughly $21 million in unpaid fines that he owes on Wednesday. The prosecution says that Roh's son's father-in-law paid over $7.2 million of the fine on Monday, and the rest was paid by Roh's younger brother, Roh Jae-woo, early on Wednesday. Kim Hyunbin, Arirang News.
U.S. President Barack Obama has moved one step closer to winning a congressional approval for a limited military strike on Syria. Members of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee have already agreed on the wording for the resolution authorizing the use of force in Syria, while Republican and Democratic leaders in the House have expressed support. Our new reporter Shin Se-min reports.
Key figures in the U.S. Congress on both sides of the aisle have expressed their support for President Obama's plan to punish the Syrian government with a limited military strike.
This is something that the United States as a country needs to do. I'm going to support the President's call for action.
It is really something that, from a humanitarian standpoint, cannot be ignored, or else we cannot say never again.
Congressional leaders were responding to President Obama's call for an authorization for U.S. military intervention in Syria.
This is not Iraq, and this is not Afghanistan. This is a limited, proportional step that will send a clear message not only to the Assad regime, but also to other countries that may be interested in testing some of these international norms, that there are consequences.
If President Obama wins approval from both the House and the Senate for his plan, he will have 60 days to strike Syria with one extension of 30 days. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said authorization would not mean that the U.S. was entering Syria's bloody civil war for the long haul.
So let me be clear. President Obama is not asking America to go to war. We all agree there will be no American boots on the ground. The President has made crystal clear we have no intention of assuming responsibility for Syria's civil war.
French President François Hollande has also thrown his support behind U.S.-led military action in Syria. Meanwhile, United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon said Tuesday that the use of force should be done within the framework of the UN Charter.
We must consider the impact of any punitive measure on efforts to prevent further bloodshed and facilitate the political resolution of the conflict.
Pan added that he will announce the results of the ongoing investigation on the use of chemical weapons in Syria as soon as the findings are complete. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Korea's foreign reserves hit an all-time high in August, renewing the record set just 1 month earlier. The Bank of Korea announced Wednesday that the country's foreign exchange holdings stood at $331.1 billion in August, up $1.4 billion from July. The reserves act as a buffer for Korea at a time of financial crisis when emerging countries may suffer from foreign capital flights and currency depreciation. The popularity of foreign automobiles is growing in Korea, and the sales numbers back that up. The Korea Automobile Importers and Distributors Association says sales of import cars rose by 32% in August compared to the same month last year. And while that is a 6.5% drop from July, the Auto Association says the surge was significant considering that August is typically an off month for car sales in Korea. BMW remained the most popular foreign auto brand, followed by Volkswagen and Mercedes-Benz respectively. August was a good month for the domestic auto industry as well. Sales by Korea's 5 automakers were up 29% in August year-on-year.
The dynamics of the ever-changing global smartphone industry could shift with Microsoft's multi-billion-dollar acquisition of Finnish handset maker Nokia and the unveiling of major new products by industry heavyweights, including Samsung and Apple. Our Kim Ji Yoon reports.
Several game changers at the start of September could be signaling a tectonic shift in the smartphone industry. With Microsoft's purchase of virtually all of Nokia's handset business, including a long-term license of its patent portfolio and its mapping services, it is positioning itself to become a direct rival to Apple and Samsung by as early as next year. Nokia was particularly attractive to Microsoft as it comes with one of the best supply chains in the world. Despite the multi-billion-dollar deal, though, analysts in Seoul have downplayed Microsoft's potential, saying its acquisition will not significantly affect the current market demographics. An analyst for Hyundai Securities highlights the major challenges Microsoft has to face, such as synchronizing its software and hardware divisions without disrupting the ability of the firm to run smoothly. Analysts also say Microsoft's move is a sign software firms will continue to seek out struggling hardware and handset businesses like Nokia and BlackBerry. They say it could be a good sign for Samsung since it cuts down the competition in the already saturated handset business. Microsoft's purchase of Nokia comes as the tech world is abuzz for the latest releases from Samsung and Apple. Samsung's upcoming smartwatch, the Galaxy Gear, is expected to make its debut this week, and Apple will unveil its latest iPhone models next week. Not much is known about the Galaxy Gear as yet, as the Korean firm has been working hard to keep it under wraps, but it's said to be deeply integrated with users' smartphones, providing a second screen on the wrist so users don't have to reach into their pockets or purses. Kim Ji Yoon, Arirang News.
Is Korea better known for its traditions or its modernity? Global experts weigh in on this at the 4th Annual Culture Communication Forum earlier this week. Our Connie Lee was there and she files us this report.
Korea, the land of the morning calm, is most commonly known to the world for its cell phones, its impressive conglomerates, or K-pop. Or, with its 5,000 years of history, does the world see the nation for its ancient royal narrative and hearty cuisines, or is it more widely known for its threatening neighbor to the north? In any case, Korea is apparently known for both the traditional cultural elements and the modern.
In a survey we conducted, we asked people what they thought of Korea. Both foreigners and locals alike answered that Korea is a country that's a blend of modern and traditional elements. So I thought that this would be a good topic for this year's forum.
The Culture Communication Forum, hosted by the Korea Image and Communication Institute, kicked off this week with cultural experts from all over the globe who came together to discuss how the convergence of both traditions and modernity can formulate a lasting image of Korea to the world. This year's 3-day forum invited 16 experts in fields such as food, literature, music, and art. But before Tuesday's discussion session got underway, the invited experts got to experience both the old and new Korea. From visiting royal palaces and checking out royal cuisine, the guests got a taste of Korean history.
Very nice, very tasty. It was very interesting to see that how the Koreans are protecting their traditions.
The guests also took a trip to modern Korea by visiting one of the most innovative companies in the nation. Hyundai Card, known for organizing massive pop concerts, also prides itself for its ingenuity.
But it's interesting how holistic their approach is, how it's a 360 approach. You know, there was music, there was culture, there was design, books, reading.
The experts say that traditions should naturally converge into the modern.
Whatever we are today, the past is superimposed on our present.
The Korean representative of the forum and actor Park Jung-hoon says there shouldn't be a distinction between the old and the new.
I think when we naturally and creatively produce culture, it connects with the past.
The amazing thing about Seoul and Korea is that mix of modern and traditional. I mean, if you walk down the street, you see like temples from very ancient time, and you also see someone like playing modern music or dancing. I'm really amazed by what I saw.
Connie Lee, Arirang News.
It's time for weather. That means we turn to our Michelle Park standing by at the Weather Center. Hello there, Michelle. How is it today?
Hi, Daniel. Our temperature differences in the mornings and nights are getting broader every day, so it's best that you take care of yourselves with the long Chuseok weekend coming our way. Meanwhile, there are clouds coming from the east, and with the high pressure, we are expected to have fairly clear skies. Taking a closer look at the forecast, it looks like we're going to have a nice day tomorrow in all parts of the country. Seoul will start off the morning at 17 degrees and reach 27 in the afternoon. Daegu and Busan peaks at 27 and 26 degrees respectively. Down on Jeju Island, we're going to have mainly sunny skies during the day and lots of clouds in the afternoon. Meanwhile, Dokdo and Mangkeumgang will be similar to today with the low 20s. Well, that's all I have for you today. I'm Michelle Park, and I'll be here for you tomorrow.
Thank you for that, Michelle. And that's all from us. Thank you for watching.
We will be back with more tomorrow at 6 p.m. Korea time.